Good morning and welcome to Connect MKE. I'm your new host, Kristin Brey. Last week, after 9 years, Andrea Williams signed off as the host of this show. Having watched many episodes and witnessed her grace, compassion, and professionalism, I can safely say she has left very big shoes to fill. But I am honored to be the one to try to fill them and to continue to discuss the issues and introduce you to the people who are making a difference in the city where we live, work, and play. This morning, our focus is on National Foster Care Month. You may or may not know that May is National Foster Care Month, which is meant to honor the foster parents, families, and all the people who are dedicated to support children through their journey to find compassionate, stable homes. And our first guest today represents the Coalition for Children, Youth, and Families, which provides resources and support through every stage of a family's foster care, kinship, or adoption experience. Oriana Carey is the Chief Executive Officer of the Coalition and joins me this morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
How are you doing this morning?
Doing well.
Doing well as we try to charge towards spring.
Right, absolutely.
That Wisconsin elusive spring.
Right.
So because this month is meant to recognize and highlight all of the people and the organizations that do such good work in the foster care system, I wanted to avoid some of the more negative statistics that I think often get highlighted when it comes to foster care, and first talk about the work that the Coalition does in both adoption and foster and kinship. And maybe we could start by just talking about the difference between those three things.
Okay. All right. Well, I think if we can kind of keep some of this simplistic and look at the fact that anytime children and families are connected with those three terms you talked about, are entering and connected with our systems of child protection, there's kind of different ways we go about trying to help children stay connected with their family as well as be in a safe place. So if the difficult decision is made that a child is going to not be able to remain at home with their parents, then typically the system is looking first to find a relative. Grandma, aunts, uncles, people connected to the family somehow so that things are not as traumatic, the moves, we can keep connections moving. If a relative, and that's what's called kinship, if a relative is not available or somebody known to the family in that respect, then often children are placed in foster care or with foster parents. Foster parents are individuals and couples who make a conscious choice to go through the licensing process, have people come in their home and background checks and fingerprinting and take additional training, and who are charged with, not only caring for a child at a very difficult time, but also helping that family remain connected. Mm-hmm. The goal of foster care is what is called reunification, making sure that kids go back home safely. Adoption is both the legal and emotional process of a family bringing in or accepting a child in their home. When that happens, it means the family of birth's rights are terminated. Those are all court processes, and the family that they're living with become their family technically in a legal sense. Again, there are so many layers and complexities to that, and many, many families stay connected today. Words like open adoption and things like that are often used.
And that makes thank you for clarifying the differences between those, because I think it's something that a lot of people in their assumption of fostering think that there's the inevitable, that always becomes adoption. Mm-hmm. And do a lot of foster parents, when they make that choice, is their expectation that they will adopt the kids? Or is it pretty clear that they know that they're a safe place or a safe home for now?
I would say that the answer to that is also complex and layered.
Shocking.
It is, right?
Shocking.
Because those of us who are in this field think that, it's all so simple and we understand it because we've done it time and time again. I say that often if we have the opportunity to work with meaning I have some folks on my staff as well as Connect with Us, people who are what I would say veterans or who have been either foster or adoptive parents for quite a while and they would say, well, what I thought in a whole lot of issues going into this and what I know today are very different. We try to be very clear up front when people go through that training process, but we are asking people to do something really complex and difficult. We're saying, bring this child into your home, love them, help them heal, nurture, build relationships with their family. And then when that process is done, we're kind of done with everything. And people keep a lot of informal relationships going when they work that process together well. But as you can understand, it's human beings.
Yeah. There's
complexities and there's other people involved, judges and lawyers and social workers. So it all has lots of layers to it.
Absolutely. And so full disclosure, fostering is something that I've always thought eventually I would do. So if and when I am ready to start that course, what does it look like to become a foster parent?
So you would contact one of the agencies in Wisconsin who are charged with what you would call licensing foster parents. And so that's either a public child welfare entity, such as many of our counties in the surrounding area. There are private foster care licensing agencies and Native American tribes who also license foster parents. And there are a series of things that people go through, an application process. Again, like I said, background checks, fingerprinting, having someone come into your home, look at the space, talk to you about a variety of things, training that you go through. And where the coalition comes in is we manage sort of the public awareness side of that. People would say recruitment. I would say, well, we're getting the message out for the need. And we have staff that answer the phones every day. And that's their job. They're assigned to answer a variety of questions, not just how do I become, but many of them are. Folks like yourself, you just said, so how does this work? Or I don't know. And the difference in interacting with us is we always say we're this safe, sort of neutral first place because we're not the licensing entity. And so some of those questions you just asked me about, what do these terms mean? Or can I do this and can I do that? We're one of those places that you can ask all these questions with no obligation. And then if, you still want to know things, we either give people packet information or we help them who they can talk to next. We always tell them to come back, if something doesn't feel right after who you've talked to.
Absolutely. So if as a place that provides resources and answers questions, I'm sure that you are confronted with some myths or misconceptions about the system, the program, the ins and outs. What are some of the things that you hear most often from people who think they know, but it's not quite right?
Yeah, well, there's a variety of layers. I think going back to what you were just talking about, considering fostering. So you'll hear a lot of people say, gee, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I can let someone go back home.
It'd be too hard.
It'd be too hard. And, there's a couple of things around that. It should be hard because, again, we're talking about human beings who need care at a really scary point in their lives. But B, if you look at it from that bigger lens, that bigger picture, both outcomes could be really, really positive. So helping a family work back together and having children feel safe and secure back with their family or a relative is an amazing thing, and you would be part of that process. And if, that is something that doesn't happen and you're ready to work through and take that step of adoption, you would also have that outcome, or you would help a child with some other transition. But it's not as black and white as I can't do this or I can't. It's talking to other people and figuring out what's right for you.
Absolutely. And what about, I think you mentioned training, as far as having to go through training instead of, well, I already have kids. Like, what training do I need if I'm just be grateful that I'm opening up my home, or like, do you deal with some of that?
And we do hear that.
Yeah.
We hear a lot of things about how big my house is, or, or people will say, why did folks have to do all of those things? Well, I will say a couple of things. I'm a mom of an 18 and 24-year-old that wasn't mandated to take training. And I can tell you backwards that I should have. Again, you're dealing with, this is somebody else's child. This is what I try to remind people. This is somebody else's child. This is somebody who has experienced something different than you may not have understood. And you want to be best prepared. You want to have information. What we know in general, parents, whether we're talking about any of the stuff we're talking about today, when people have good quality information and they know how to integrate that into their parenting, the result is they tend to be more confident, more resilient, more flexible. And this is a group of children and teens who need confident, resilient, flexible people. And so that's what training helps with, and continue to ongoing, providing training and information. And that's why we're here. People continue to connect with us because information changes. Or like I said, what I thought once is very different today.
From your you said 24 and 18?
Yeah.
A little different than a 14-year-old now, potentially.
Yes, absolutely.
So as you said, and publicizing the need, what is the need in the greater Milwaukee area right now?
I always get asked these questions either about numbers or percentages or this, and my answer will always remain the same. If today a social worker has to make the really difficult choice of removing somebody from their parents, their family's home, what we want is for people to have lots of choices. We want to make sure there's as many different types of families and backgrounds as there are the children that are coming into our system. And so it's really hard to quantify a number. We want to keep kids in their communities to the greatest degree possible. We want them to have the opportunity to stay in their school or stay in their neighborhood as possible. And so that need is shifting and complex to nail down to this exact number.
Thank you so much for joining us today and all of the work that you do. And where can people find more information about the coalition, or how they could help, whether they want information on becoming a foster parent or just giving a donation?
Right. So we have, a lot of different ways to connect with us, obviously through Facebook and the social media channels. But I tell people one of the easiest ones is this quick site that connects to all of our other portals called fosterparentsrock.org. It's easy to remember. You see it quickly, and it'll connect you. We even have a connection if people get on there and they're from another state and how they get licensed in another state. So,
all right, wonderful. Well, Oriana Carey is the Chief Executive Officer for the Coalition for Children, Youth, and Families. For more information, fosterparentsrock.org.
Yeah.
Perfect. When we return to Connect MKE, we will continue our conversation recognizing the dedicated people who work within the foster care system with our guests from Kids Matter Incorporated, Executive Director Susan Conwell and CASA Program Director Lance Jones.